A prairie boy with a big heart who knows how to make money in risky business reevaluates and redefines success. Philanthropist, driven investment banker Brett Wilson, the hugely popular former co-star of Dragon's Den, reflects on the highs and lows of his mistake-riddled roller coaster life so far and redefines success. Wilson believes the bigger problem you solve, the bigger the reward. It's okay to keep making mistakes, and success is not about a fat wallet. It is my pleasure to be with you today and with engineer, investment smarty, philanthropist, adventurer, TV star, cancer survivor, and Order of Canada recipient W. Brett Wilson. He's a Saskatchewan boy who still sees the world through a prairie lens. Along his path to success, he's made a few incredible choices and some fairly big blunders. His stories and advice are wrapped in a candid book he calls Redefining Success. Still making mistakes after all these years. Still screwing up, are ya?
Twice yesterday, probably once this morning, and the forecast for tomorrow is 2. We'll see.
Hello.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Vancouver.
Oh, I love it here, especially on a sunny day.
And you're going to tell me you brought that prairie sunshine, aren't you?
Hauled all I could.
Okay, so little boy dreams, your little boy dreams. Did you dream about being rich?
My first dreams were about being a scientist. I still remember in about grade 3 or 4 when we were asked to define what we wanted to do when we got to wearing big boy pants. I wanted to be a scientist. But the other thing that was kind of interesting as a child, the only time I ever heard my parents fight, it was after I'd gone to bed, and it was about money. And I think that's where I started to evolve the thought process that if I had money, everything else would be fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got there. You got money and everything wasn't fine. But before we go there, back to the parents.
Yeah.
Your dad sold cars.
Yeah.
Mom a social worker.
Very much.
You're sitting down at the dinner table, and they talk to you about choices. Like take it or leave it.
That was my mom's approach. She always said she was a great chef. She had 2 items on the menu every night. There was take it or leave it. Those were your 2 choices. Absolutely.
And so mac and cheese or casserole or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I suggested that you still see the world through a prairie lens, true?
Very much so.
And what does that mean?
To me, it means people who understand the value of a hard day's work usually means a roof over your head, food on the table, and then probably saving a little bit for some education at some point. Those were common prairie values, prairie ethics. I mean, it's a cold winter that we suffer up in Western Canada, and you have to be sturdy to get by.
Mm-hmm. And get out your Cowboy Ethics Bible occasionally.
Oh, I love that book. I mean, here we are plugging my book, but I'll plug someone else's book about the subtitle, I think, is Code of the West, but it's about ethics on Wall Street, or the lack thereof, and what Wall Street could have learned had it followed, if you will, the code of ethics of the cowboy. You know, listen, loyalty, ride for the brand, make a promise, keep it. There's some pretty simple statements that I get pretty emotional whenever I read that list again.
Well, as you know, most cowboys are quiet. They're reflective, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. It's about getting the job done. You know, and the cowboy can be the cowboy life can be a very lonely style of life, but at the same time, when they come together to make something happen, it's pretty powerful. And my real successes in life, as I would describe them in terms of business, have all come with partners.
Success to you, 20 years ago.
Deals.
How did you define
money, art, cars, house, office, all the material trappings of success. But it was a very common. I wasn't alone in the pursuit of, if you will. In fact, the title of the book for many months when I was working on it was Redefining Success in a Wealth-Obsessed World. Because we in Western society are really focused on those measurement techniques. There's never a concept of how much is enough. It's always more.
Mm-hmm. And so to get to less is more, you've had a few issues you've had to deal with. A health issue, number one.
Yeah.
Well, take me back before the health issue. Lovely wife, 3 kids, working 24/7, doing what our parents taught us to do, bring home the bacon, well, when you're a boy anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, in no small part, I mean, one of the reasons I was working was to provide for my family. And so, of course, they would understand that I had to work a few evenings. But a few evenings became most evenings. And then it became weekends. And it became Saturday mornings and Sunday nights. And then it became Saturdays. And then it became Sundays. And the work and the pace of work never slowed down. And then at the same time, the rewards of that work, which were mostly material, started to pile up. And so it became expensive not to work a weekend because you didn't do a deal or you didn't create an opportunity to make some money.
And what was the thrill of the deal for you? What was the juice?
There's an adrenaline rush that comes with putting something together. Creativity is a part of it. I had, over time, I developed an incredible network in Calgary, as most investment bankers do, but half my classmates from engineering school in Saskatchewan were in Alberta running the oil and gas industry for the most part. And then 2/3 of my MBA classmates from the University of Calgary were also in Calgary, if you will, running the oil and gas world. So between the two networks that I brought to the table as a result of university, I had an incredible running head start over most people because it was one phone call away from almost every CEO or president. So it was an opportunity for someone who was good at the investment banking business to create, we call it collisions, and those collisions would create deals, and that's what I did, and I did well.
So Mr. Big Time is having a great time in business.
Yeah.
At home, any idea the wife wasn't happy? Any idea the kids missed you? How disconnected were you is the question.
Well, as the marriage started to slip, it was easier to be at the office. But of course, the more I was at the office, the more the marriage started to slip. So it was a spiral. It was just like one of those toilet bowls you flush, and that's where the whole series of relationships that I once had was starting to go.
So a defining moment, one of the defining moments.
Well, certainly Pam, my ex, was looking for more time. She wanted us to do more. I mean, it was always a challenge because I had the office. But I was at home one night and I was doing what I called babysitting. And that in itself is pathetic because parents don't babysit, parents parent. But in my mind, I was stuck at home babysitting, and I'd rather have been at a particular art auction because there was a piece of art. And if I had that piece of art, my life would be complete that week. And so I was stuck with having to bid on that piece of art from home. And that was fine. Pick up the phone, I'll get on the phone and I'll participate in the auction. But the phone rang 2 or 3 times during the early part of the evening, and it was never for me, it would appear, because no one let me know it was for me. And I phoned the auction house and said, Peggy, where are we at with this particular piece? And she
What
said,
was the
Brett,
piece?
Ernie Lindner, who's
Okay.
a well-known,
Yes.
renowned Saskatchewan painter.
Absolutely.
And I like to think I dominate his collecting.
You do, eh?
I do. I love his work. But there was a piece, and I still don't know where that piece is, and I'm okay without it. But I'd lost it because it had already come up, and I was furious. And I still remember, without explaining the words, I was raging at my little daughter who had told someone that I wasn't home. And I remember my last words are, "What the frig are you doing telling someone I'm not home?" And she looked up at me with these big brown eyes and said, "Because you never are." And it just drove home at that moment the gap between what I thought was right, which was being there when I could be. The concept of quality time was the 5 minutes I would give them before they went to bed, if I could be home before they went to sleep. And the gap was so large that it was almost a revelation for me. And again, it doesn't seem like that. It was a relatively innocuous comment, but at the time it just struck me.
So that was an aha moment of sorts, and then you had many more. The cancer scare,
Yeah.
more than a scare.
I was diagnosed with at the time, the most advanced case of prostate cancer for my age that the clinic I went to had ever seen. In fact, I was the youngest person being treated at this clinic down in the U.S. And we had to move quickly. There was, at the time I was told, there was an 85% probability that the cancer was outside the gland. And the problem with prostate cancer, the great thing about prostate cancer is if you catch it early, it's a good cancer to have because you can treat it.
Treatable.
You catch it late, it metastasizes in the bones and gets into the lymph, and frankly, there's very little you can do. So here I was with an 85% probability of being told that the cancer would be outside. So I turned to a radiation protocol that at the time was experimental. It's now available across Canada, but at the time it was experimental, and I headed off to the States.
I've had some of that radiation myself.
Oh.
Yes, and they give you a tattoo, don't they?
I have 3 little tattoos.
So do
in
I.
fact,
So they hit the right point.
I've won a few bets. It's interesting. We're not going to expose the tattoos.
No, because
but,
mine's about the same place yours is, so we won't do that.
So you two are a cancer graduate,
I'm a
as I would
cancer,
call it?
yeah, I'm a cancer survivor,
Yeah.
below the belt cancer survivor. And most of the people I went along with at the clinic were prostate guys, because we were, well, I'll tell you later all the details. But in any event, it's interesting sitting in a cancer clinic, and you'll know that because their Armani suit is in the closet, and you're in this funny little outfit with
We're
your
all
little
very equal.
camp bag, and you're
Yeah.
pretty equal.
Yeah, actually, when I started doing my morning radiation, I took the first slot in the morning because I wanted to get it out of the way, and it was at 7 a.m. I thought that was a pretty cool slot. But as I got tired, as the weeks progressed, I got tireder and tireder, and getting up for that 7 o'clock got harder and harder, and I'd be back in bed by 8 o'clock and sleep till noon.
How scared were you?
You know, I thought I had a process under control, but what I was lonely more than anything. I was down in Florida at this clinic. Phone calls were interesting. The internet was awful. It was dial-up, so I didn't have the speed. I should have chosen a different place to stay, but I had a place that was happy, and I had some of my personal belongings. But it was a surprisingly lonely time going through the radiation.
Why me? Did you go through that?
Oh, I did that early. I still remember writing out. I was on my way to my cabin with my kids, and I had a friend driving with his kids, and I wrote out my funeral plans, sort of what I wanted to have happen, because I'm thinking this better be dealt with. And it was an incredibly cathartic process in itself. But while I'm writing it out, my son tapped me on the shoulder. I thought he had spotted it or seen it, and he said, "Dad, I have to pee." And that was the end of my cathartic process. We jumped out of the car,
Yeah, right.
we peed on the highway, got back in, and,
Life does
and
go
moved
on.
on again. Exactly.
Well, you live but once, so you might as well be amusing, I suggest.
Enjoy.
When we come back, we'll talk about success for you today, what it is. It's more about happiness,
Very much.
but it's loosely connected to work.
We can't abandon
No.
having to make a living. It's about having a multifaceted definition of success and not the narrow-minded.
A little work-life balance, as they say. We'll return with W. Brett Wilson and his take on happiness, life choices, and redefining success.